God. God had to come down and say, no, 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 what's going on down here? These humans are onto something. The God of the universe loves us beyond measure and wants to be our friend. He desires to share with each of us a unique, unbreakable bond. This is First Things First, a devotional podcast where for 365 days, first thing each morning, we are going to be getting to know God better. We're going to be seeking His daily will for our lives and seeing how best we can seek first His kingdom. In short, we'll be putting first things first. Good morning, good morning, good morning, and welcome back to another devotional. This is First Things First, and I'm your host, Melissa Sewell. Now, we are in the month of February, and February has often been ambushed by love throughout the years. There's always a strong emphasis on the lovers, on love, on relationships in the month of February. And keeping up with this age-long trend, I decided that most, not all, but most of our devotionals will be related to relationships, not just romantic relationships, really romantic relationships, but we're going to be dealing with platonic, familial, little romantic, all sorts of relational dynamics. And if I asked you what the cornerstone of relationships is, what would you say? To kickstart our relationship series, we're going to discuss what I think is a very impactful cornerstone of relationships. We're going to be dealing with, starts with C, communication. You can't have an active relationship with someone if you guys don't communicate. Communication, therefore, mediates relationships. How we communicate is important. Our goal of communication should be to be understood and to convey our thoughts in a way that achieves that goal. And communication, it's not one-sided. So while we want to express ourselves, it's all for nothing if the recipient of our expression doesn't understand or they aren't able to comprehend what you are saying. So communication is about trying to be understood and the recipient doing the work to understand you. If you are communicating with someone who isn't curious to understand, or they've already made up in their minds what they think the situation being discussed is, there may be broken lines in communication. So we're going to be dealing with communication this morning. And before we get into our Bible passage for today, let us have a word of prayer. Father in heaven, thank you so much for the gifts that you have given to us, the gift of a new day, the gift of making relationships with others, being understood and understanding others, and living in community. I pray that today that you will enrich our relationships through better communication. In Jesus' name, amen. God Himself knows the power of communication. And before you say, okay, yeah, I know that anything God says happens, so of course He would know the power of communication. That is true, but that's not what I'm talking about. God knows the power of effective human communication. How do I know that, you may ask? I'm glad you did. Let's turn to Genesis 11. Genesis 11, in this chapter of the Bible, we have the infamous story of how humans set out to build a tower that touched the heavens. The story of the Tower of Babel. So let's read about this experience that God had with humans, and let's see God's take on how humans can communicate, the heights to which communication can bring humans. So Genesis 11 verse 1, I'm reading from the ESV version. Now the whole earth had one language and the same words, And as people migrated from the east, they found a plain in the land of Shinar and settled there. And they said one to another, communication, come, let us make bricks and burn them thoroughly. So they had an idea and they had a plan of how they would execute this idea, how they would see this idea to fruition. So the Bible continues, and they had brick for stone and bitumen for mortar. Then they said, come, let us build ourselves. They said, come, they said to one another, come, let us together build ourselves a city and a tower with its top in the heavens, and let us make a name for ourselves, lest we be dispersed over the face of the whole earth. And guess what? They were successful with doing this, to the point that the Bible continues, the Lord came down to see the city and the tower that these humans set out and were united to build. And the Lord said, behold, they are one people. The people were united and they have all one language. And this is only the beginning of what they will do. You know that saying that people have, that the best is yet to come? For those building the Tower of Babel, because they communicated so well and because they were so effective at executing what they planned, God said this is the beginning of what these humans can actually do with effective communicative channels between or amongst themselves. So God says, behold, the people are one and they have all one language. They are all being understood. And this is only the beginning of what they will do. And nothing, this is the verse that got me, nothing that they propose to do will now be impossible for them. God says about humans working together, about humans effectively communicating, that nothing they propose to do will now be impossible for them. So God says, come, let us go down and there confuse their language so that they may not understand one another's speech. So the Lord dispersed them from there over the face of all the earth, and they left off building the city. Therefore its name was called Babel, because there the Lord confused the language of all the earth, and from there the Lord dispersed them over the face of all the earth. What a story! God says nothing these humans can do will be impossible for them, because the people are one. They are united. They have one language. They are communicating effectively. And because they are working so well together, this is only the beginning of what they can do. Wow. Can you imagine God saying, because they are united, because you are united with those you work with those you are in relationship with, because you communicate so well, you are understood when you converse with those you're in relationship with and you seek to understand them, and because you execute so well together the plans and ideas that you have. If I don't stop you, no one else can. Imagine God saying that to you. It is true that communication is key. What if some of the people at the Tower of Babel said, no, we want to use sticks for bricks instead of mortar? What if that happened? Would the tower be built successfully? No, they would be divided. I'm sure they had differing opinions, but they were able to come to an agreement. Okay, let's use this amount of water. No, try a little less water and a little more mortar. And I'm sure they found their perfect formula for how they would make their bricks, for how they would build the Tower of Babel, to the point that God had to come down and say, no, what's going on down here? These humans are onto something. I need to put an end to this, because we don't need a tower touching the heavens. What kind of competition is this? So God had to say, if I don't stop them, nothing else will. They were on the same page. They had the same goal. They communicated well. And so my prompt for today is that we ask God to help us to better communicate in our relationships, in our families, in our workplaces, wherever we are, in whatever tier of communication you fall in with others. Communicate well. When we do that, we will see unrestrained possibilities from God. Imagine God saying to you, you communicate so well that only I can hinder the plans you have. Wow. And my song recommendation for today is We Are United by Brooklyn Tabernacle Choir. Imagine if churches, imagine if families, imagine if friends, imagine if acquaintances, co-workers, husbands and wives, siblings, imagine if we all communicated like the people at the Tower of Babel. And God has to say, hold on, I like that, but I don't want you to do that, so I have to stop you. Or God can say, whoa, I like that. I have instructed you to do this thing and you're effectively executing it so well. Let me enable you to do more. But at the end of the day, can we say, or let us strive to say, that with the communication styles that we have and how we can execute, only God can stop us. Only God can stop us. Thank you so much for tuning in today, and I believe there is another word on communication from this very story. I got it just now while reading the text. So tomorrow we're going to do our prayer emphasis, and then Wednesday we have our seasoned emphasis with a twist on relationships, and then Thursday we'll be back with part 2 of communication from the Tower of Babel. Lessons to glean from the people at the Tower of Babel. Thank you so much for tuning in. Remember, as always, to put first things first.